How authentic then is the threat to the UK from Britain's returning after fighting in Iraq, and why are they actually going there? Joined from our central London studio now by Ashgar Bukhari, a spokesperson for the Muslim Public Affairs Committee. Here with me too, Sakar Al-Makhadhi, a British Arab journalist. Gentlemen, a very good morning to both of you. Ashgar, can I start with you? We've talked many times down the years. This represents something new under the sun, doesn't it? And I wonder what you think in particular is motivating young Muslim Britons to go to Iraq. It's one thing in a sense to go to Syria. We saw that clip there from young jihadists back in December. It was pretty black and white then, wasn't it? Go to Syria, fight Bashar al-Assad, fight a repressive regime that's perpetrating all kinds of human rights abuses. But the picture in Iraq involves fighting their co-religionists. Why are they there?
I think most people that are going to be travelling abroad will be travelling because they feel people are suffering, people are dying, and they want to stop it. And it's an ethical reason. And you heard.
So join the Red Crescent.
Well, you're not going to stop Bashar al-Assad by joining the Red Crescent. This is about stopping someone.
Just set Syria to one side. We're not talking about Syria. We're talking about Iraq. Why are young British jihadists going to fight their co-religionists in Iraq?
To be honest, I honestly do not think that any large quantity of Muslims is going to Iraq at all. I mean, if a tiny number are going, and they're going for one of two reasons. One, because they have highly sectarian motives, and two, because they simply do not believe in Sykes-Picot. But pretty much it's a tiny fraction. The vast majority that are going to overthrow what they believe is a tyrant oppressing people.
All right. And Sakar, in terms of why you feel, I mean, Ashgar makes the point, actually, the vast bulk so far of young jihadists who've gone to Syria have gone to Syria. They're maybe bleeding now into Iraq, but that's a problem further down the line. Why are they going? What is the motivation for them in your view?
I think there are two reasons. I think first of all, they are frustrated, as you just heard, they're frustrated at Western inaction in Syria. Syrians are frustrated, and British Muslims are frustrated that no action's been taken, and they feel like they're filling the void. They feel like they're doing a public service in some way. I think the reason that it's continued to attract British Muslims, and the reason that people are now allegedly flying to Iraq to fight the same war, is because it's a state building project. ISIS wants to build a Muslim caliphate. It wants to build a pure sectarian, religious, a purist state across Syria and Iraq, and they're succeeding in doing that. They've taken control of large chunks of territory. They're imposing their will on the people of Syria and Iraq and forcing them to flee in hundreds of thousands out of their hometowns. And they're building this state, and they're doing so well at this state building project and being able to perpetuate themselves. Yeah. That this is the pure Muslim ideal religious state that extremists have been drilling into these kids in universities and towns across the UK.
Ashgar Bukhari, do you buy David? You're shaking your head. I was going to ask you about a different topic. Just tell us why you're shaking your head.
I mean, yes, ISIS has not taken all that land in Iraq. It's a fallacy. It's a Sunni uprising. ISIS is a fraction of the people fighting in Iraq right now. So the fact that they're creating a caliphate doesn't make them extremist. That means that they have a political worldview different from yours. Let's not use propaganda words for talking about facts on the ground and why people do things. A terrorist is a terrorist because he kills innocent people. That's fine. But someone who goes into Iraq because to fight Bashar al-Assad doesn't mean he's a terrorist. Neither does it mean he's an extremist because he believes in a caliphate. Come on.
Do you think it's also hyperbole of David Cameron, Ashgar Bukhari, to talk about what's happening with ISIS as being representing the biggest threat to the UK?
Absolutely. I mean, ISIS is an extreme group, no doubt, but they are not as powerful as we would like to pretend. It's a Sunni uprising. That's why they've made massive gains. There's no doubt about it that some of them are a danger to the UK. But how much of a danger? I mean, come on. We saw it with Adi Balaja. You don't need weaponry to do damage in the UK to kill people or commit a terrorist attack. So ISIS is not the problem. What the real danger here is that any policy reaction by us, anything that we do, we go start bombing them or attacking them, all it will do is strengthen ISIS, because across the Muslim world it will play into the narrative that says, look, it's true, they really do hate us, they're at war with us, we're not fighting them, we're fighting for our land or whatever, and they've attacked us.
Second, that's exactly the problem.
Be very careful about that.
Yeah, you talk about that void that was there in Syria. Muslims look at the West and say, come on guys, why didn't you get involved in Syria? But if the West were to get involved in Iraq, as Ashghar Bukhari makes clear, that then becomes a casus belli for those people who would actually attack Western forces.
Oh, of course. Western involvement in the Middle East is toxic. There's no easy solution. It's not easy enough for the West to go and carry out a few bombing raids and solve the problem. But I do have to take issue with you, Ashghar, on the issue of calling ISIS terrorists and calling them extremists. They're too extreme even for Al-Qaeda. The fact that they're cutting the heads off of women in Syria, and the fact that they've forced 500,000 people to flee out of Mosul, I think shows that they have got a terrorist agenda and that they are doing something big.
ISIS, I agree with you. ISIS, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing about the group ISIS. I'm talking about, you earlier on, you said a caliphate. I mean, that's a separate issue. As far as ISIS is concerned, I agree with you. They're extreme.
Yeah. I just wonder, actually, Ashghar Bukhari, we talk about the caliphate. Is there an argument here that says that ultimately some sort of caliphate, a small caliphate, emirate that straddles that border between Syria and Iraq, that will be run along the lines that ISIS want to pursue, as a political experiment? It could be fascinating because, in the fullness of time, people who live under that kind of yoke, if that's what it turns out to be, could dash the hopes of all those people who feel that it's a good idea.
Possibly, and look, guys, let's look at this historically. The reason why you're getting young Muslims going in there and talking about caliphate and talking about, or going there or wanting to be involved in this, is because their self-determination, their expression of their political will, their political trajectory has been denied to them due to Sykes-Picot and dictators and stuff like that. All we have to do is give a safe environment, say, have your free will. Choose what you want. We don't agree, and if you look at across the Muslim world, you will never find, apart from a handful of crazy nuts, people who say, yeah, guess what, I really want to live under the Taliban, right? They're human beings. They want a liberal society. Now, but by denying them that, and by us imposing what we think is best for them, plays into the narrative that says, look, they hate us, they're denying our self-determination, they're denying our right to choose the way we want to live, and we've got to fight them. We don't need to be involved in that. If they, let them live the way they want to live, and you will find Muslims generally, if they're not put in an incubator of being bombed and invaded, will become liberal human beings across that region.
Saki, you could argue, couldn't there are double standards here? I mean, if you think back to the 1930s, there was a generation, admittedly, of sort of Western intellectuals who went to fight in the Spanish Civil War. They were lionized and lauded as freedom fighters, people who were, militants of conscience. And here we have young men who feel moved, motivated to go and potentially lose their own lives in a cause that they believe in, and we are denigrating them and condemning them as out-and-out terrorists.
I think that the Spanish revolutionaries didn't carry out the kind of atrocities that we're seeing ISIS carry out. The fact
quite a brutal civil war, actually.
It is a brutal civil war. If you look at what's happening,
the Spanish Civil War was quite a brutal civil war.
It was, but I mean, the Brits that were volunteering to fight out there weren't doing it for crazy religious ideological reasons and oppressing the people who they claim to be fighting for. That's exactly what's happening in Syria and what's happening in Iraq. This isn't some kind of experiment that we can tolerate or that the world should tolerate. This isn't something that the people of Iraq or Syria have called for. This is something that foreigners have come in, and by foreigners I mean British Muslims, have come in and tried to impose on the people of Syria and the people of Iraq. And this is something that Syrians especially are furious about. They want these foreign militants out of their country.
Okay, gentlemen, we've got to leave it there. Ashghar, I know you've got more to say. We'll have to continue at some other time. Thanks a lot.